Did you say, Jerry, I need a raise?
Well, he went. He went to. He tried to get a teaching job, and they wouldn't hire him because he wanted to go to further education. So I told him, I said, they don't want a teacher for a year, Jack. So he went to work for the school. And he worked there 2 years. I mean, when you're 22, 23, that's about recruiting, going out and visiting high schools and showing about your college and all. That'd be a pretty neat job. And I told him, I said, well, at some point you're going to have to decide what you want to do. I mean, I don't know. Biology degree. I don't know what you're going to do.
We're live.
But he's still waiting. He's got some other options.
That's my hair.
That's
It looks good.
He did get accepted.
Never looked together. Thin. It's very thin.
Mine didn't turn gray, it turned loose.
What have you been doing with it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that first. If that would be good.
Hey, we've got another gentleman. We were going to see if we could just. He's not going to speak, but he just wanted to listen in. Is there any objections to putting him on a speakerphone?
He's the asset manager for the Rock Falls Wind project, and his flight was canceled to Wichita today. Is that okay?
That's up to you all.
Okay. Call the
What
meeting
is
to order.
his name?
His name is Chris DeVault, D-E, capital V-A-U-L-T.
Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry, Alvin, go ahead. Roll call. Lamb, absent. Jones?
Here.
Brabender?
Here.
A quorum has been
Hi,
acknowledged.
this is Jennifer. I'm going to put you on speaker and muted, okay?
Okay, I guess we're ready. So, consideration and possible action on formal appeal of, which one is the first one? Rock Falls.
You ready?
All right, we'll hand out a few. Just a little packet of evidence. You want this one? Are you?
Oh, no.
We're
sure?
good. Yeah.
We can give them that one. Yeah.
No, this one.
I mean, if you're not going to use it, we'll flip the pages
I'll
and
look
follow
at
along.
it. Yeah.
Roll.
Go ahead. Go.
Okay, my name's Jeff Taylor. I work for Merit Advisors representing Rock Falls Wind Farm. What I have before you today is just a packet of evidence. I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. First page there's the table of contents, and you can see each tab there refers to the numbers to the left of the description there. So the first part here I'm talking about is how we got here. The Blackwell Economic Development Authority, which I'll refer to as the authority from future purposes, but this was put together with Blackwell, the authority being an economic development group trying to incentivize the area to bring in development and job growth. So Blackwell is the ownership of the property. Them being a public municipality, we believe it is exempt property. So going to tab 1 is the original 901 that we filed with Grant County. You can see there in the beginning there was some information flow issues. We did render it as Rock Falls. We were not aware from the very beginning of the authority owning the project. I have recently, tab 2, amended the 901 under the ownership of Blackwell Economic Development Authority doing business as Rock Falls Wind. Tab 3 is the original notice of value from Jerry Wisdom. You can see it was noticed at $178 million. Tab 4 is after the informals when he reduced it down to $161 million. There's a lot of information here. I'm going over tab 5, and I'm just going to read some highlights of it. The Blackwell Industrial Authority and Blackwell Economic Development Authority are public trusts of the city of Blackwell. Their mission is economic development and job creation for Blackwell and the surrounding area. Both have authority to operate within the state of Oklahoma. And over the past 30 years, the authority has operated and leased as many as 10 different sites and owned over 250 acres of raw land. Buildings are leased to companies and for their operations. Some have been built specifically for companies bringing jobs into the community. Others have been remodeled to suit or just leased as is. Land for development is available for sale or lease or development. During this time, all property owned by the authority have been exempt from property tax. So the authority and EDF have entered into an agreement where they took ownership, the authority took ownership of the project, financed it by issuing bonds, and leased it to EDF to operate. As a result, Rock Falls is owned by Blackwell Economic Development Authority and is exempt from property tax. It is not any different from land or building projects previously done over the years. So 6 is the Economic Development Agreement. Flip over to page 2, where I've highlighted there, in consideration of VITA entering into the other agreements, Rock Falls shall pay the authority annual payments in an amount of equal to $400,100 per year. So that economic development payment is going to the schools. They're getting, excuse me, they're getting some economic development authorities money for development here. Flip over to tab 7. There's a memo that gives notice of ownership and a contact info for both Grant and Kay County. They received this on December 28th. So both counties were aware of this agreement and had the information, addresses to send them the correct information for 901P and all that information. Tab 8 is a brief that went to Kay County. I'm flipping over to page 4 on that brief. The key question is one of ownership. The Oklahoma Supreme Court has consistently held that where the ownership of the trust property is vested in the public trust, the property is exempt from ad valorem taxation, even if it is leased to a private entity. Flipping over, I'm running through this real quick, so if you guys have questions. Jerry, question?
No.
Tab 9 is the ground lease agreement. I'm flipping to page 2 on that lease. Ground lease agreement is made and entered into November 13, 2017 by and between Rock Falls Wind, which is the lessor, and Blackwell Economic Development Authority, which is a public trust organization existing under the laws of the state of Oklahoma as the lessee. Flipping over again to page 6. Section 6 there. While the ground lease remains in effect, the improvement shall be and remain the property of the lessee, which is Blackwell Economic Development Authority, and they are a public municipality, which should be exempt. So up to here, go ahead. Yes, please do.
I'm Jennifer Berry with Phillips Murrah in Oklahoma City, and I'm local counsel for Rock Falls Wind Project, and assisted as a local counsel when they put together the ground lease and the sublease structure. And I wanted to just touch on what Jeff was saying about the ground lease and how that was set up to operate. Because if you look at page 5, section 4 of that ground lease, the concept there was that the Rock Falls Wind Project had gone out and acquired different lease rights from the landowners in and around Grant County and Kay County. And so they leased those under this ground lease to the Economic Development Authority, with then the right and the idea that the authority would then construct the improvements. Now the authority is not in a position to go out and actually do the construction, so they contracted with Rock Falls Wind Project company to actually do the construction. But the ownership of those improvements and the intent of the ground lease and the subsequent sublease is that the development authority would maintain ownership of the turbines, the transmission lines, and all the improvements making up the facility, because that's the key component under our case law to establish that fee ownership requirement so that the benefit of that ad valorem exemption can be achieved during the 10-year period that the statute permits. I just wanted to focus on that piece. Go on, sorry.
So with that, our position on the property is that it is exempt from taxation, and they are making economic development payments that will go to the school districts to provide for them. So with that, moving on to page 10, even as exempt property, we understand it's still got to be valued. So page 10 starts, this is the Oklahoma Tax Commission page that they come out with in January of 2018. This is their guidelines for appraisal of the wind farm. As you see there, they specifically highlight the 3 items: the nacelle, the foundation, and the substation and the lines.
Where are we now?
I'm sorry, you're on tab 10.
Okay. Which is page 10. Okay.
I'm sorry. Flip over one page back. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the items that the Oklahoma Tax Commission say is taxable, and those are the lives they believe it should be used for the valuation. So Mr. Wisdom's appraisal was not created using that 12-year life. It was all on a 25-year life. And you can see that earlier in his appraisal, which went through, I think it was tab 3 and 4 was the new ones. The page behind that is their depreciation schedule, which the lives that should be used for the 25 and the 12-year life, the factors that should be used. And then the final page there is my valuation using the Oklahoma Tax Commission guidelines and using our cost that was provided by EDF. We believe the property of the value should be in Grant County $95,481,987, while being exempt.
If they have any questions.
That's all I have. If you have any questions for me.
So, what is it valued at right now, or what's the assessment?
I'm gonna go through my presentation on that.
You know.
Well, I'm Jerry Wisdom with Total Assessment Solutions. We do all of your personal property here evaluation. First off, I want to point out, he made some mention about that the assessor knew that this property belonged to economic development and that she should have sent a 901P to, or not 901 to the assessor. Oklahoma statute 682835, it shall be the duty of the county assessor to furnish such forms 901 to any taxpayer upon request and all personal property. The form was never requested from Rock Falls or the economic development be sent. So I want to clarify that is that they didn't request her to send a form out, and it's not her duty to do so. If you go to I have 17 pages here. I'm going to be quick, kind of like Jeff was, and certainly ask any questions. When we get back to back, it's going to be basis. But basically, our opinion and your district attorney's opinion here in K and or in Grant County and in K County are in agreement that this lease isn't active, and they don't recognize that. There's some certain terms in this particular court case that supersedes this certain sale and leaseback agreement. But on page 2, this is the actual Board of Equalization deal. He believed the fair market value to be $121,500,000, and today he intends the value to be $95,481,987. So his original that's filed before the board is $121,500,055. So it's lost a little bit more value. And it was if you look up the top, the owner's name is Rock Falls Wind. Another position that the county made is all through this period, even from the 901s through the 975s, the 974s, 976, it's always been in Rock Falls Wind. He did send an amended rendition a couple of days ago. The horses are kind of out of the barn a few weeks ago on as far as getting the proper ownership. I'm going to skip through page 3, but I want to point out that the original cost is supposed to be reported. They report the total new or replacement cost new. We don't believe that they reported the total cost new. We don't believe that these numbers reflect the total investment, that if it's Blackwater economic development or if it's the other, we're going to show that it can't be true. The next page, on page 4, shows the rendition that he's to fill out. It says original cost or RCN. Again, the name was Rock Falls Wind. You go to page 6. This is what he reported as far as cost. And if you look at the upper right-hand corner, it says fixed asset listing. I submit to you this isn't the fixed asset listing of the company. This is something that Merit Advisors made, so it's not actually from Rock Falls Wind, or it's not from the Blackwell Economic Development. It doesn't have any of their letterheads whatsoever from their books and records. So it shows, just to break it down, just for the wind turbine machineries, which is the 2 top lines, they have a reported cost of $90,629,222 for a total of 103.9 megawatts. That equates to $872,274 per megawatt. So just think of that a minute. So per megawatt, that's kind of like a per square foot method, if you will. So that's the number that they reported to the assessor's office as being their total cost. It's impossible. Next page. This is our value showing a $1,671,000 as a start rate for the cost for the facility, and our original notice was $161,189,872. Me and Jeff had several emails back and forth to acquire the EIA 860 report. That is a report each year that the company is required to send to the Energy Information Administration and give the total cost of the facility, except for the transmission lines and the other. But the wind generation facilities, they turned this in since 2013. It was a report. We requested that. To date, we have not received that report. That would shore up this other information. They said that they did not file that report. The next page, this is the 2015 wind generation report from the EIA. This facility is at between a 100 and 200 megawatt facility. So the range of value in 2015 was $1,572 per megawatt. Average across the U.S. Theirs is $892. It's impossible. The costs are not correct here. Next page. This is cost from company online FERC information that we acquired. If you look down at the bottom of the 2016 and 2017 costs per megawatt, you can see the 2016 average was $1,571,466. 2017 average was $1,618,226. Again, far from $892,000. Next page. So Rock Falls Wind turned in the total value of total cost of $143,988,348. That's substations, power lines, and everything. And remember, the other costs were just for the turbines themselves, but it only equates to $934,000. We take issue with that for the valuation purposes. So the next page is the actual company, EDF, actually constructed the Great Western Wind Project in Ellis and Woodward counties last year, and it went under the 5-year. The total cost per megawatt for that facility that they built in Woodward and Ellis was $1,487,778 in 2016. So how did they get this other one for $700,000 per megawatt cheaper? It's impossible again. Next page, page 12. So this is the EIA 860 report that I requested from them. As you can see, none of the numbers were given for there, but down at the bottom, the Red Pine Wind Project, see, this shows the total cost of what it would be. This was a wind farm in Texas. Well, that'd be great, but we're not valuing the wind farm in Texas. We're valuing the one in Grant. So we would really request this information here, and we will do so, you know, if it goes on to district court, which, by the way, it's going to, gentlemen. This is going to go on further, no matter what the outcome is today. So I just go to the next one's the informal protest. He says praised over the market value is unequal. What evidence do you have to support this value? We've got one page over here. I don't believe that supports the value. This was a deal that said he just found out it was not taxable. But here's the proof in the pudding between the two. In reference to this letter that he had in his report requesting the county treasurer and them do that, this is a response from the district attorney in K County. It says the Blackwall Economic Development Authority. The K County treasurer and assessor are in receipt of your letter, they said, dated December 28th, 2017, request that a notice be filed of record concerning the Blackwall Economic Development Renewable Energy Lease bonds and payment in lieu of ad valorem taxes. Please be aware that the K County treasurer and assessor will not be filing a notice you requested. Was found to be unconstitutional by the Oklahoma Supreme Court case in 1980 on January 1st, 1980. No changes have been made to the statute since that time, so your request has no basis in law. This is from the district attorney. We go to the next page. This is from your district attorney in Grant County. The Grant County District Attorney is in agreement with this letter dated 1/4/18 for K County District Attorney Brian Hermerson, where Brian lays out his objection to your request. Therefore, the Grant Treasurer and Treasurer will not be filing a protest. So I respect their attorney. I'm not a lawyer here, but what I'm getting at is I think we should go with what your district attorneys advised, that it's not exempt for this day. We would ask that you affirm the value on this last page of 178 million. Excuse me, is that right?
You want my glasses?
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
You owed me one, didn't you? What's the current value?
178, 7.
Yeah, is it 178, 786, 382.
282.
282. I guess I do need your glasses. But based upon that, it's going to go to court. K County did the same thing a couple of weeks ago under this. It's going to go to court. We'll let the courts decide on the exempt or not exempt. I don't believe the value is correct. We believe we valued the other wind farms in the county just like this one. So we would just ask the board affirm that value based upon that. And that's that simple.
Out of curiosity, it's a $400,000 payment to the Blackwell Development Authority.
That's correct.
Well, okay, how does that compare with
About 1.7 million will be the taxes for this county. About 1%.
just for Grant County?
Yeah.
Based on your valuation.
Yeah. Based on your valuation, it'd be 900,000, 950,000, which has no basis.
So can I
Yeah.
comment on?
You comment on value. I have some other things
Okay,
there.
so you mentioned something, Jerry mentioned something about an inactive lease. I'm not sure where that came from. I think you used the word inactive lease.
I did.
There is no inactive lease. I mean,
I don't
there is a
recall.
lease in place between Blackwell Economic Development Authority and Rock Falls Wind.
I think I said something about a sale and leaseback agreement.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
The next point I want to make, you said it was too late. The horses are out of the barn. This is why we're here. I mean, to fix this, to figure out who's the ownership. It's not too late. Now's the time that we need to be deciding this. Guys, if you put this on the tax roll, I mean, somebody's going to be spending some money putting it back. And this is something that's exempt and it's owned by a public municipality. The cost we provided are the cost from the Oklahoma Tax Commission guidelines. Just like I spelled out for you, it's what they say is taxable. Those are the costs I provided to them. What Jerry's looking for on this EIA 860 report, it shows the full cost of the entire project. There's obviously intangibles in that project. Every project is going to have them. He mentions the Great Western Wind Farm. The cost that you used on that were not the cost that we provided. The reason it's high is because it's a 5-year manufacturing exemption. We've got that exemption in place. They didn't use our cost provided, they used their own numbers.
I would also point out that project is 3 times the size of this one.
Yeah, it's not comparable. It's not the same project at all. Going back to the EIA 860 report, Jerry has requested it. We've requested it from a client. It's just being a new project. It had not done it yet. As soon as it's available, we give him the one for Great Western, and we'll give him the one when it's done. At this point, it's just not been done. So nobody's hiding anything. Nobody's trying to keep anything from him. It's just a fact of it's not available. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. I wanted to address that. I completely agree on the Form 901. It is on the taxpayer, and it was erroneously submitted, and there's no hiding that. And so, as I think Jeff pointed out, that's what we're trying to hear is to correct this and to explain what I think maybe has been lack of information or misinformation. And to the point about the DAs, my understanding is there's a little bit of a discourse at this point. These letters, this is the first time I've seen these two, but the K County District Attorney does take this position that it's unconstitutional because of this case. And the background on that is that if it's unconstitutional under a case called Dunbar because it's an executory contract, which means that the owner or the lessee has the right to buy back from the owner at the end of the day for a very nominal amount. And that's not the case here. We tried to follow a case called, it's the Oklahoma Industrial Authority versus Barnes, that outlines how you can fit within the Constitution with partnering with an economic development authority. And so we knew we had these two bookends, and we tried to stay as close to Barnes as we could to still fit the business model. And I'm meeting with John Robertson with the Blackwell Economic Development Authority, their counsel, and possibly, if he's available, Tommy Humphreys, which is the assistant DA, that they've been talking about, that if we will modify the bond structure to get closer and be in line with Barnes, then they support this bond structure and moving forward with the lease and the ground lease. So I don't think it's entirely accurate, but I also know that it's kind of a moving on a day-to-day basis in terms of the facts, with the DAs being in agreement. I do acknowledge that K County a DA is not in agreement and won't return anyone's phone calls and does not support this. So to Jerry's point, I think that will definitely make it to court. But we are working with them, and they're agreeable to that, and so we're going to put that in process this afternoon into the economic development payment that's been made. They have that, and that's another item on our meeting agenda this afternoon, is to get that payment structure in place, because what we'd like to follow is the percentage of tax distribution that would have been distributed if it were taxed in the original sense, and go ahead and get those payments out ASAP, essentially, instead of waiting, because I think that this will get worked out in one way or another, but those payments are in their hands and should be forwarded, because I think taking it to its practical conclusion, if we end up and we're in some sort of settlement, we get credit for those monies if they were paid to the school. So we want to get those moving and out to the school where they should be. And then the only other question, you commented on the numbers that Merit provided. I'm like, do you only accept values from the owners directly, or do they use third parties? Because I would think that not a lot of...
As the agent, we have the right to put the cost on
together.
On our own
Okay,
paper.
I just wanted to clarify that.
It's just not the fixed asset listing of the company.
We provided the assets that were taxable from the Oklahoma Tax Commission's website.
Just like the name of the list is not accurate.
So let's go for the record then. So did you exclude certain costs from the fixed asset listing?
They provided me those specific costs.
That's the 100% cost. You didn't exclude anything
Not
from the
exclude
cost they
anything.
provided to
No,
you.
sir.
Okay, that's fine. All I'm just saying is I don't believe that they supplied him with the complete fixed asset list. I'm not saying that you didn't do
And
that.
I'm going
but-
to tell you, I haven't seen a complete fixed asset list.
Okay, so that's our point, is
I
that it can't
requested,
be.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I
No, it's okay.
requested the assets that were taxable from the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and those are the assets they gave me in their cost.
Okay, so they could have excluded what you might claim to be intangibles then.
I'm not going to speculate on anything being excluded.
Okay, I just showed the other number. So I guess the thing of this is, as you've heard, the DAs may or may not be. I'm sure they're talking, together.
Well,
I mean,
that's the
she
other thing
certainly
I
do
was
that.
told is that they're not talking.
Okay, so
That's why I'm like,
Okay,
I
well,
heard they're not talking. and
so
then
here's
I've
what
heard-
I would
so
suggest
I'm
is-
trying to find that out this afternoon is to get my
Absolutely.
hands around that.
So for this board, I think the thing that I would suggest you do is that you go ahead and affirm the assessor's value that we had and just make the ruling, based upon that valuation, because it is a valuation issue at this point. And if it gets changed, that it's on the tax rolls, the assessor would have to do a tax roll correction at some point that everybody would have to sign off on. So I'll just ask you to affirm the value for 2018, and we'll just continue on. And then if it gets worked out, then the district attorney or the courts will instruct the assessor to do a tax roll correction to give to the treasurer, and so on and so forth.
One question, I understand, maybe I misunderstood,
No.
that the 400,000 excess dollars may increase, and that may increase to the authority? Or did I misunderstand?
No, that would be over the 10-year period, and then they also agreed to an additional 11th and 12th year payment of I think $100,000 or $200,000 beyond that 10-year period under the statute. So no, it doesn't increase. That's a fixed payment.
Does the authority pass through the total amount to the counties and the school districts, or do they keep part of it?
No, they pass it all through.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have nothing further. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
No, sir.
I like Jeff.
Okay.
Seems like a fun guy.
Do you still like me?
You're okay too.
Next time we'll release some glasses.
Thank you.
Well, do we have a motion then to affirm the assessor's value as presented?
I would move that.
Okay. Second.
All in favor, Broadbender? Jones?
Aye.
Motion carries. And what was that amount again, please? Amelia, or,
You want me to give her my number?
$178,786,282. It's on page 17 of my exhibit.
okay,
So,
which I need a copy. I don't have any of the
Here,
documentation on any of this
there we go.
stuff.
I wrote on mine.
That's okay.
We don't let Ben have an ink pen.
He only gets a pencil and I can erase that.
Thank you.
Or talk.
Thanks, guys.
Good to see you,
So I
Jerry.
think-
You too, Jeff. Fly safe. And does he let you drive or anything?
Man, he did, I'd gone with him before, and he let me once I got up in here.
Do you have any
course we
questions?
weren't.
Do you want me to call you back?
Wouldn't let me land or take off. We'll
Take
take
it.
around. He let me.
Okay,
I
we're
place
headed
things
out.
in the cloud. And
Okay. Bye.
Taking off's a lot. Landing's the trickiest. I think anybody can take off, but it's the landing that's the tricky part. It's also done by airspeed. So
We got one more.
This is a pretty cool trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a little experience where a guy let me.
what was he charging you an hour?
The whole trip was like
Oh,
500? 11. Oh, 1100. Yeah, as much as you guys are making, you can afford that. We probably have to take the bus.
Hitchhike.
I'll keep your card, Jennifer, in case I need you.
okay.
Yeah.
You might.
It won't be a conflict, will it? If I'm in jail or something, can you still represent me?
Jail? I don't know about jail. I'll probably just leave you there. If you wanted to buy a piece of property, though, I'll help you with that.
Okay. All right.
Get a
More real
loan.
estate.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Fantastic.
That's good.
Hey, thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it. It's good to hear you.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you
you.
very much. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Jerry, always a pleasure, buddy.
See you.
It was
Okay.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Ladies,
y'all very
it was
much.
nice to
Okay,
meet
nice to meet
you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Y'all have a good day.
Okay, you do the same.
Thanks a lot.
Tax roll collection, the
Uh-huh.
excise. That needs to happen before the collection process.
Yeah, but it's probably
Thank you
not
so
going,
much.
at
It was
some
nice meeting
point
you. It's
after
very
the
good
court's
meeting.
rule, what's going to be held up is you'll have to pay under protest, and you'll have to hold an escrow.
And that would be fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As long
that's
as we
what-
hold it for the
Yeah,
refund.
whenever they file a pay, they'll pay under protest, and then you'll have to hold 100% because they think it's zero, or they may hold that apart. I don't know. He's got an opinion of value here, so alternatively,
Is this meeting over?
yeah. I
Did
think
you
so.
adjourn, guys?
Well, we got
No,
another
we're still in a
meeting.
meeting.
Okay.
It's all one meeting, so we're ready
Oh,
for
okay.
the next
Yeah.
group.
I
It's
have
11.
Plan B.
At one point, I was in the process of trying to do business with them as far as leasing some ground. I'm
Mhm.
gonna go get my contract and see if it says anything about the economic development being part of that.
Okay. Yeah,
Don't
we can talk about more.
Sent that in 2 days ago,
Yeah.
putting it in that name.
Yeah, I don't remember it being part of the contract that I looked at, which makes a difference.
We have anybody else here besides?
We're gonna have Chisholm View, I think, at, weren't they 11?
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, were they in the hallway?
I don't know.
I had them yesterday, and maybe I scared them
On the
off.
5-year?
Mm.
Okay.
I just don't know why they think they're perfect.
There's a trash up, there's a trash can over here by Robin.
I'm trashy.
Robin.
You are from Texas.
We never admit that.
We know better than that. That's just something coming out of her mouth. Huh?
She's just talking.
It's more trash talk. I want more trash talk.
There you go.
Did they make it?
Yes, they're.
Okay.
Yeah, they were sitting outside waiting.
Why? Protested
About
at
it.
all.
Uh-huh.
They wouldn't have applied for 5 years. Right?
Well, Robert just didn't apply
I
for
know,
5 years,
these guys
but
did.
yeah, yeah.
So if they
And
were able to-
I think we're gonna settle this one.
Okay.
Just
I
here
hope
pretty
so.
quick.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna use.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Joe, come on in.
And everything.
Hi.
You bet. TV. Smile.
And a
You're
gavel.
famous.
Make sure you smile.
And a
We
gavel
got
is
some
not
other
being
people. Oh,
used.
hi.
Yeah.
Hit him in the head.
Oh,
Oh, no. I mean, that just came out. I
Hit
got
who
you
in the
last.
head?
Did I
What
tell
is
you
wrong with
that?
you two?
I'm so sorry.
Okay,
So
they
these skills are all recorded.
Are you ready?
Are they videotaping you?
Yeah. Did you do your hair?
So I'm saying, yeah.
Blank ones right here. I made some blank ones, but isn't that the right one?
Yes.
We can buzz Alex to come in.
I still have my book from yesterday, so it's gonna be the same book today, so you want to get me one.
You didn't
Hello,
change
John.
anything?
Yeah, I did.
Hi, Robin here.
Hey, Robin. I'm Joe Molina with Ryan.
Hi, and
Good to see you again, Robin.
Good to see you.
Okay, well, yeah, that'd be fine if you'll come in and
Oh,
notarize
hang
yours.
on. I gotta go get my books out of the car.
He's gonna,
Oh.
you know, who they are. I mean, just need to look at their-
We have a rule, if you're not in by 11:08, you lose by default.
That's right.
It's called a buy.
Yeah. He'll probably want a mulligan.
Here,
Down.
if you ever sign it, you don't sign right here.
Rob, okay.
Oh,
She got another.
she has more room down there, doesn't she?
I think Nita's got him down there. And we watched them sign.
All right, Derek. All right. I hope you are who you say you are.
I can vouch for him that it's his name. I can't vouch for anything else, character or anything else like that.
Oh wait. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was Oh, in a minute. It's not signed.
Well, that's in the flag ceremony down at the,
Just a second.
that County Expo Center.
Oh, really?
The 4-H kids have really been working this, because I guess you have to cut the flags up to dispose of the flags. They have to be cut up a certain way, laid a certain way. All the flag has to be kept together. So they had, I think, the last I knew, they had like, I don't know, it was like 300 flags or something that they were going to be, so they were having a ceremony down at I think then they burn them, don't they?
Yeah, it's nice. But my wife got one for our county
Oh, really?
because we didn't have one before. And
Yeah.
so she reached out to whoever in a similar
Yeah,
looking box and where people could put their old flags.
Yeah. Well, our OSU extension, they kind of took care of it, so then they got the 4-H kids involved in it, which is
That's
good
who does
because the
it, yeah.
kids need to learn that stuff. Yeah.
It's the 4-H and the Boy Scouts in,
Oh, cool,
in our
yeah.
area that do that
Well,
kind
good. Now, where do you
together
live?
to teach them.
Where are you from? What area?
Van Buren County, Arkansas, so
Oh.
just about an hour north of Little Rock.
Okay.
His wife's the treasurer
Mm-hmm.
in the county.
Is
So,
that right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
so a little bit thing in common right there.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Does that change your opinion?
No.
He's still from Arkansas now. Come on.
Whoa, I went to high school in Arkansas. There you go.
Okay, well maybe I'm outnumbered.
If you're in Oklahoma, you can't really dislike anybody from Arkansas. We gave both universities some of our best.
Oh,
I mean,
football
come on, really. I mean, Barry Switzer was a good one. Jimmy Johnson was a good one. You know, come on.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
No, and y'all are both better than we are, so what the heck? We're horrible.
But we know how to call pigs, don't
We do know how to call pigs. Now, our baseball is a little different now. If you notice that
the World Series, you
the
gotta get
Razorbacks
that.
are in the World Series, and I don't see any Oklahoma
I
team.
get from our
Sorry.
main office is in Little Rock, and I've got a girl in there that works really close with us and stuff. And every year I get something from the Hogs for Christmas presents. I've got all these collections. I'm fixing to make a little deal in my office to put all my treasures.
Do you have the
my hog
hat?
treasures. Yeah, so I got a
Can I
hat
have
and
it?
a little football and a little plate.
Yeah,
thing
plate,
and
cutting board.
yeah, cutting board.
Yeah.
She
Gosh,
goes
that's
every year.
great.
She gets me one of those. Of course, all during the year, I'm on the weekly polls. I'm sending out the OU football polls, letting me know where we're at each week.
Here comes another gift.
Only if they're in the top 10. After that, then we don't get any notices from him if they're not in the top 10.
It's some of the other people that are my other guilds. I'd say, well, I was looking for the Hogs, but I looked. They're not in the top 150. What happened?
Or after they lost to Clemson, we didn't get anything after that either.
Okay.
But that's okay.
I think
From Arkansas, we wish we would have been there, and we wish we would have been able to lose that game. That would have been
We're
great.
gracious.
Yeah, we are gracious losers.
Yes, There's something to be said for that.
All right, in that farm folder that.
No.
over there on that wall against the window.
Where
I've
at?
got all those.
Okay.
Huntsville. I
And
went to high
I
school in
think
Huntsville.
it says on there. I think it
Fixing
is
to go
too.
back for my 40th reunion. Is that? Oh, you're old. Kidding.
When did you graduate?
78.
I graduated '79.
Did you?
I graduated 80. 79, 80.
Yeah.
Good year,
I'm
wasn't
not
it?
telling.
You're not telling.
Then the crickets over here. Where
Do
did
you know
you
where
go to?
Huntsville
You would
is?
in
Huntsville.
Huntsville?
Do you know where that is?
You told me we
Yes.
talked about it one
That's
time.
That's
and
right. We
we're-
did. It's been a while. Right outside of Fayetteville, Springdale.
Right, that northwest area up there.
Northwest
Yeah.
Arkansas. Yeah.
And I went to school up there. You'd think I'd know it, but
That's right.
Now,
Where
but-
did you go?
the University of Arkansas.
Before we
Oh,
talk,
okay.
Derek's from Massachusetts, so he has a little bit of accent. Could you talk a little bit for us, Derek?
I can talk.
What's the matter with you?
The nice young lady at Brahms last night told me I didn't have an accent at all.
Yeah.
Was she from? Yeah.
Where was
She was-
she from?
she was-
Joyce?
She was lying.
I had some,
from Joyce.
some friends from Michigan always come down and say, well, "Could you say tar for me?" And I said,
come on back
"I mean,
here."
like tire shoes? Is that what you mean?"
But we do have one from your area that's a Razorback, Pat Bradley. They call him the shooter. He was a basketball player. He was fantastic. But He loves Boston. That's where I think that's where he was from.
Yeah.
He loves the New England area, and he's a big Patriots fan. But he stayed in Little Rock.
Stayed down.
Yeah.
Are we all ready?
Where's this? Just
Down this
okay.
way.
Yeah. The shooter. That's what he called it. The shooter. And boy, he could shoot.
Okay, I guess we're ready.
We're ready.
More or less. I just had to go
Okay.
tell the construction guys right at 16 minutes to start the jackhammer.
It's going to take you 15 minutes to talk then, right?
You got 2 minutes.
All right. Okay. You want to talk about wind farms?
Sure.
Well, you all met Derek with the company. I'm Joe Molina with Ryan. We're a property tax firm. Well, we're nationwide, but we're headquartered out of Texas, Dallas, Texas. Been doing property tax for 20 years. Not quite as old as Jerry, but I'm right behind him. Done a lot of work in Oklahoma, but it's always been at the centrally assessed level, not so much the local level. But I've worked for 7 years out of that 20-year career on Jerry's side of the fence. Represented 70 plus different counties throughout Texas. So there's some similarities to this state in that the counties may hire an expert to come out and assess the industrial properties, and the locals might take care of the land and the residential. So I spent 7 years doing that. Also started off at the state doing utility properties. So that's the extent of my experience. So what we're going to talk about, of course, is the wind farm and how we valued it and why it's different from what Task has done. To us, it's a income producing property. It's only worth value to somebody if it can make money. And it only makes money when the things are turning and when there's a nice, decent electricity price to earn on that. So we make widgets like many other manufacturers, and we sell those widgets if we can. This particular wind farm has been constricted and constrained because of congestion. So this is part of the SPP market, and they are the grand overseers of who buys and sells and for what price, more so who sells it. And because of where they're located in the transmission line, plus everybody else is trying to sell electricity, they have not been able to sell all the electricity that they can possibly generate. So one of the things you're going to hear is why an income approach to value is so important, because it's a cycle. If you make the widgets and you're able to sell them and earn a fair rate of return, you have value. And that's what well, there's your wind turbine, right? So that's when it's best, and its highest and best use. The market is in equilibrium, and they're earning a fair rate of return. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the cost. And we stood out there for the last 10 minutes of your last hearing, and I heard some discussion about cost. But as an appraiser, the cost approach is but one measure to value. And for an income producing property, the income approach to value is the more important one, because that is why and how these things buy and sell. And to me, whether you're talking about original cost or historical cost or replacement cost new, if you do your income approach right, you're going to get the right value. Because cost is a historical element. It's something that we paid back in 2012. But when you measure what somebody would pay you in terms of a money income to produce this electricity that his assets can provide, then we're talking about value. So who wants a book? How many do we have?
There are 2 board members,
Just
and I'm
2.
the secretary, but she's the treasurer, so probably the treasurer. And
Assessor.
I'll
Whatever
get
you
copies
have
from them
enough
if I need to.
Okay, this is the same one from yesterday too, Jerry. But you're welcome to.
You got an extra one for Van to
No.
look at?
He's just going to doodle anyway.
Yeah, that's what I did yesterday. 'Cause
We can share.
it's about that important.
Okay. Well, it's less for me to have to fly back with, so I'm happy to. All right, so let me walk you through our story and our development of market value. This package is going to be valuing the whole wind farm, okay? And I think Jerry takes the same approach as well. It's one economic unit. The fact that it's in 2 different counties is irrelevant. We can parse it out based on the number of turbines or based on some percentage. So let's walk you through the summary then. Behind the summary tab, you'll see all of the parcels listed. Obviously, you only want to pay attention to the one in Grant. Our current assessed value, again, for the whole wind farm is $271 million. Below that, you'll see the two approaches to value that we ran. We ran a cost approach, which is $222.7 million, rounding up, and an income approach that came in at $111 million. Now, as an appraiser, I've got to look at those two numbers. I've got to consider the information that went into the development of these approaches, and I reconcile the value of market value of $189 million. Okay, so the difference here for the entire wind farm is the 189 versus the 271 million. And to break that down strictly to your county, here in Grant County, the value we're asking of you today is $37,015,899. So let's talk about that cost approach. The cost approach starts on this page here. You'll see the little blue shading at the top and the bottom. We start with the cost that is on our books and records. Yes, there are some intangible costs in this number, but if your accounting records don't detail and break them out, that's okay, because again, there is one key element here that's going to tie this value to the market, and that's the income approach. So it goes back to what I said earlier. I don't care what cost you use, historical, replacement. If you do it right, the income approach to value is going to give you the right value. So this wind farm is not new. So we're going to value it as of January of 18. And to do that, you'll see that I used an index factor of 84%. What is that 84%? The cost for these wind farms have declined in value. If you look at the history, they increased, peaked around 2008, 2009, and the costs have been coming down. The technology behind that is the reason for that, plus additional competition. So in order for me, if I were to build this wind farm today, my reproduction cost new is $311 million. That's a brand new wind farm. It's not brand new, so I've depreciated using the expectancy life formula to get to a basic cost approach of $271.5 million. The other thing that I've done on my cost approach is also reduced it for its inutility. Remember, if I'm not turning, and if I'm not turning to what I expected when I was building the wind farm, the certain number of hours, then I'm being underutilized. And if my machine and equipment is not churning, it's not producing any widgets, I'm not earning anything. So that is a underutilization penalty of 18%. It's also a number that you will probably see on the task approach to get to a replacement cost new less depreciation of $222.68 million. Now, we're not done yet. The cost approach to value is only finished when you test for all forms of obsolescence. That's straight out of the manuals. So, is this asset earning a fair rate of return? And there's a couple of things that tie it to the market. One is the income approach. The other is a market approach. Now, sales in this county probably haven't happened. They're quite rare. Even when they do happen, you don't know what they're buying. Are they buying a higher price contract in the PPA with the utility? Are they buying one that's still under a 10-year M&O warranty? So those are the things that you have to adjust for. But in a sales price, all you get is quite often the press release. And there's just not enough information there. So that is the discussion about the cost approach. If you flip the tab, I'm going to show you where that 84% came from to adjust it. My index was based on one source. I did look at 3 other sources. So if this here is called a wind turbine price index. So just like you all may use Marshall and Swift in value in your commercial or your residential properties, these folks specifically built a wind turbine price index. And this little graph here will show you what has happened to the cost of wind turbines, peaking in 2009, showing you to beyond 2017 of how the price has dropped. So we take those index numbers here, translate it to something that we can use as assessors, and you see the highlighted 0.84 going from December of 12 up to the lien date January 1 of 18. Any questions on this so far? Okay, let's go ahead and flip page there and let's talk about that income approach, which is a discounted cash flow. You know, when you buy a house or if you want to run a hotel, it's worth to you the present value of the future benefits. Raising your family in that house, enjoying time out by the pool, farming the land, renting hotel rooms. And you can discount those benefits. Obviously, we're talking about only money here for a wind farm to today. So what are you willing to exchange today? What would a willing buyer give you for that in exchange for that income stream today? And so that is the essence of a discounted cash flow. What we did here is we used a 5-year average. So if you look in the very first column, it says actual. These are our actual 2017 numbers. Had 18.7 million in revenues, and then we escalated that upwards by 2% over the next 20 some odd years until, well, the entire life of the asset, all the way to 2037. Yeah, we subtracted again, taking a long view of this of the 5 years, and we used average expenses, and then we discounted that. We used an 8.08 cap rate, plus we loaded it for the property taxes, because if you're trying to determine the value of something, you don't subtract the property taxes and expense, you add it to your capitalization rate. So we did that here, and at the very bottom you'll see in yellow, this is the sum. This is that present value I'm speaking of the cash flows. So this is your income approach to value, 110,898,000. One of the key things that you'll hear where we differ from Jerry is he doesn't use actual numbers from this wind farm. We provided him with the actual financial statements, and he's done some tweaks to it to get to his value. That's going to be one difference. The other difference is going to be his capitalization rate. And while you can develop your own capitalization rate, I simply went out to the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and even though they don't do the valuations on any wind farms, they do develop one for the electric industry. And on this next tab is where you'll see that 8.08% cap rate that I used to discount my cash flows. Derek's wind farm is not a utility. He's not. He's only got a power purchase agreement on 80% of the capacity. So the other 20%, he's got to sell it on the streets every day. And again, he's subject to that SPP market. So to me, it's obviously riskier when you're an independently owned power producer than, say, OGE. But for the sake of trying to find some common ground, I used this capitalization rate. So I'll cover one last thing with you, is on the next slide. This is the model that Task provided with me on how his income approach works. Now, his is different because he's not doing discounted cash flow. And to me, when you're valuing a wasting asset, you've got to use the discounted cash flow to measure the differences in that income stream over time. What this model does is capitalizes it into perpetuity. So you can look at this model, you can do it today, you could have done it 5 years ago, you can do it 10 years from now. If you use these same exact numbers, you're going to get the same exact value. So this wind farm will not last forever. So to me, this income approach is incorrect. I used, again, the 5-year averages, and I used the cap rate developed by the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and I arrived at a value of 206 million using the Task income approach model, which is significantly different than the entire value of the wind farm at 271. Last year, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, the entire value last year was 261. So
You're wrong.
Okay.
It's like 261, 173. So.
Last year? Yeah. Okay. I'll stop there since Jerry's cracking jokes.
We already went through this yesterday, and I wouldn't have done that to the board if you guys would do that. Again, it's not confrontational, just like, with Jeff, and we both have jobs to do.
Sure.
We just work on the right side.
Some people do that job better than others.
Are you through talking?
I am. Yes, sir. But I would appreciate some rebuttal based on what comes out of your mouth.
we both said yesterday, we went back and forth a little bit, and he'd said, well, that's all I got to say. And then I said, well, that's all I got to say. And then I don't know if it was me that said something first after that, but then anyway. We have had some discussions. First, I want to say that Derek and her company on the renditions and stuff that they provided the assessor are spot on with the other values like the other companies have done. Not necessarily the other case and the other one. So their information they've had, they was on a 5-year exempt manufacturing for 5 years, so that the state has been paying their taxes based upon that. But now that they got to pay their own, Joe believes that it should be less. That way he gets a better Christmas bonus at the end of the year. So, all in fun. But anyway, there are two different approaches. They did 2 approaches to value. We did 3 approaches to value. And there's certain differences on that. But the first I want to point out is that this facility is a 235.2 megawatt facility. So if you go to his back here on past on his summary page, he's got his market value is 189,146. The 235 megawatt facility, he's saying that the market value of that, if it's sold, or what the market value would be, 804,192. So let's think about that again, and I try to make this as simplistic as possible. So he's saying, based upon his income approach and his cost approach, we're saying that somebody would pay this amount for that. And I think he said, well, there's probably hasn't been any sales in the past few years over this. He's incorrect. There have been sales. Grant Wynn sold and K Wynn sold. So we do have some sales, fortunately, for this board to look to hang their hats on to as well. So if we go over here to his, let's talk a minute, go back to his cost analysis. So he started out his historical cost of $370, $318. That equated in 2012 to $1,574,484 per megawatt. So that was what it cost in 2012 to build. He used this Bloomberg factor that I made a comment about last night for supper. That I won't repeat that here. that he used to do an index, and it was one of 3 indexes that he cost about. But I want to point one thing out about your index. This is for the price of the wind turbine only. It's not its total installed cost, is it?
No, but the wind turbine comprises 70 to 75%.
But it's not the total.
And no.
Yeah. So this is just one component. It didn't have installation costs and all the other costs to go with it to reduce that value to 311. That's one point. So if you look at the 311,000 or 311 million, excuse me, that if you divided that by the 235, it equates to 1,322,567. So they're saying, he's saying that on January 1 of this year, I could have built this facility for 1,322,567. Doesn't add up with all the other information that we're having on the star rate, and that's in the cost approach. You have to look at those things, and I'll get to the income approach too in a minute. But there's 3 approaches to value. But what I'm saying is the 1322 doesn't add up. I would agree with he just adopted my functional obsolescence. You see that capacity per JW. But if you look at that number and take that capacity factor out, he comes in at 271,562, doesn't he? So our start rate was $1,671,000. Times 0.82. That comes up, if you go ahead and do my percentage for the obsolescence, it comes to 1,370,220 fair market value. So what I'm saying is because I utilized my obsolescence factor, I adjusted. You can't use this factor and the obsolescence factor the way that he did it. You can only use one or the other. Your start rate has to be right, or it's going to skew the numbers. I'll get into that a little bit more too. But on his Bloomberg index, I did a little research last night. That is just the cost of the wind. It doesn't. It's some transportation isn't included in that. Some's not. I believe the recent Thunder Ranch that you guys built last year, which the other county I think was around 1.5 million, was what their cost was for Thunder Ranch, which was a a bigger facility than this. You still have some sort of cost to capacity factors as well. So if you go to his income approach now, sorry, to the DCF page. Joe, you said you used a 5-year average for a start rate, correct?
Yeah, for the revenue and the expenses.
That's incorrect. You captured the 2017 only. The 2017 was 18.7. Let me just pass these out.
Okay, well, are you talking about DCF or yours?
No, I'm talking about yours.
No, the 5-year average pertains to yours because you use a direct cap model.
Okay. I thought you said that you utilized the 5-year average.
No,
Okay.
Only on a direct cap. Can you?
We can replay the video.
The discounted cash flow. The definition of a discounted cash flow is you discount the earnings by year based on the shape, duration, and risk associated with those cash flows.
I don't believe you can capture I don't think you could just capture the 1 year historical because it was the most down year. You'd have to look at an average, wouldn't you, for a start rate?
Well, no, because when you're doing an income approach to value, again, what's the value? The present worth of future benefits. This gentleman's wind farm is subject to congestion. This year, already, through the end of April, $3.8 million of opportunity revenue has been lost. Projected to lose $10.2 million this year because of that congestion. So if that's not going to go away, I'm not going to pull that out of my forecast.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that's going to go away or not. I mean, we haven't seen any of the contracts or any of the information. We did discuss some of that information last night. So, but anyway, I took it as you said you started, but the 5-year average for the income was over 24. Or revenues was 24,829,000, and he started at 18,737. That's about all that his 8.08 cap rate. The cap rate that we used was a 7% cap rate. Came from the market analysis that we did. I would just look at this and just say, gentlemen, they're not going to sell this wind farm for $110 million for this income approach. So. But you have to look at all three approaches to value. I still agree with that. But the DCF is so easily manipulated going out into the future and try to forecast that information. The thing about that is that you can look at this 1 year revenues and you look at another that's going to be the same. Well, this is typically going to be the same. They've got a PPA contract that increases a little bit each year based upon their revenues that they're going to get. Now, they've been some extraordinary conditions, I guess, about this constraint. It's the first time that we've heard of it, so I don't know. I'm looking at the market data that we have of buyers and sellers. I don't know that anybody else has had this constraint, properties with the other wind farms. So, anyway, that being said, let's go on to these OTC cap rates, 8.8. I'm not too terribly, built up on that, but the I have one other note here. He said that this income approach would be what a willing buyer and a willing seller would look at. This is what they would base if they was going to pay it on. So let's go to my exhibits right here. Before we get too far, let me just pass this one out real quickly. The hotel printed these up for me last night.
Yeah, you left a couple on the desktop, by the way.
That was a little joke from yesterday too, guys. You got to have a little pun there too. So we're talking about these historic costs and this trend. So this is the EIA construction cost, and I looked at the EIA because this EIA 60 report that we talked about last year is a report that all these wind farms send in each year. So this is the data collected from all of the facilities. In 2014, the cost to build a 200 to 300 megawatt facility was $1,654,000. Okay. You go to the next page. In 2015, it was $1,652,000. If you go back to his trend, that doesn't correlate with that. Well, one of the reasons it doesn't correlate is that his trend factor he's using is just for the wind turbine parts only. Gas, fuel, labor, all the other construction costs have gone up. That's the other component that you have to use. That basis alone, we should discount his cost approach. The next page. So this was something from your other packet that we had. 2017, here's 2 wind farms that were built. Agreed, this was a 164 and 170. It was more in comparison to the Rock Falls a while ago. This is a 235, which you look at the other page that's more consideration up there is 1.571 in 2016. But if you go back over here, you can see the average. Next one is cost to capacity scale changes a little bit for each one of these. It's all based upon the numbers. So this is a EIA land-based capital cost multiplier. It's something I discussed yesterday. I wanted to give this to Joe today. This is how we did our sales analysis approach to value. This is a based. I think that thing's carried over from yesterday. That plague we had. I can't talk. Land-based capital cost multiplier. So for all across the U.S., this is, if you look at how much it costs to build a turbine, this tells you how much more it's going to cost you to build in Massachusetts. I don't think I said that right. Or how much it's going to cost you in California. So this is an adjustment, if you will. So when we did our sales analysis, we found out where each one of these assets were built, and we used this factor to adjust all the values to make them equal, to make everything an equal playing field. The other thing that we utilized was the net capacity factors. And that was the obsolescence of 18% that you see. So to make all of the other wind farms equal, we adjusted all the capacity factors. We used the EIA cost information that was on these other tables over here. So we used the cost for if it was built in 2015, we used this as a cost multiplier, applied that, and then we figured out if we did a cost approach how much it would do. Now then, for the sales of those, we took the property, plant, and equipment. They did allocations to the purchase price. So you had an X amount of value, $500 million. So then they said of the $500 million, the hard tangible assets was $400 million. $100 million went to goodwill, whatever. When you book assets, this guy's an accountant, and please stop me if I'm wrong, by the way, there. When you book assets, anything over the fair market value or the fair value of the assets has to be booked to an intangible value when you do an acquisition. So so if it's $400 million and the replacement cost new, or they use several different methods, even the discounted cash flow or comparable sales, if it's that much, you have to book that to goodwill. So when I did my sales analysis, I took all of that intangible value out. So now then we're talking apples and apples. We're talking about location to location. We're talking about a net capacity factor to net capacity factor. Now we're just talking about some blades and some bolts and nuts and everything that's in there. And that's what buyers and sellers are looking at. So that was a locational factor. So you go to the next page. So the next one, K Wind Farm sold to Southern Power, if you look over right, $481 million in 2015. Grant Wind sold around the same time for $258 million. The sales prices of those was $1.608695 and $1,708,609. So those were the values that were given to the companies. If you go to the next page, if you know,
Jerry, can you just briefly describe the source of this?
It's off their 10K.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all of their.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us just a minute to digest it here? So you've done the math for us, but where is the sales price on this 10K?
481 million. The price is on the right hand side.
Right. Okay. And so then you're taking the 481 divided by the 299.
That's correct.
Okay, where have you adjusted for those intangibles?
If you go to look at the in their other 10K, they did not give anything to the intangible value. It was all booked to the PP&E.
Did you include that in here?
No, I did not.
That would be pretty important to see.
I can certainly send that to you on a deal, but I mean, I got thousands. I get 12,000 pages for you. That's for later for court.
Just send me the
But no, it was. There were several deals about the booking. It talks about it down at the bottom, but anyway, okay. I'm just trying to keep as less paper as I could.
Yeah.
The hotel said there was a 18-page limit on the printing my documents for me. Yesterday they was out printing stuff, and I said, "Well, where'd you get these binders? It's pretty cool looking." The hotel printed. I said, "Where are you staying at?" So anyway, let's go to the last page. Jeff was just here a while ago, and he gave you a couple of pages out of the tax commission book, didn't he? He kind of left this page out. Not that I would hold much, basis, but this gives them an idea. So 2010 to present, the cost per megawatt for all of the facilities in Oklahoma averaged $1,576,835. So that's still in our range of value we're talking about. When we talk about values, Joe's got a range, I got a range. It's hard for me to say put that number exactly on there. Now buyers and sellers will do that, and then whenever Derek does an allocation, other people are going to come to a number and say, okay, Derek, this was a property, plant, and equipment, this was intangible, that's how you're going to book it out. But they go through all those facilities in their due diligence. But just for that, it's $1,576,000. So now that I went through all that, we've got this right here that I'm just going to flip through a few things, but let's go to page 5. It's just kind of a page like this. It's got all of the wind farms in Oklahoma. And then all of my sales analysis I did, I had over 110 wind farms in the database, currently for the sales that we analyzed that we had specific data for. So, but what we looked at for all of this is this information here. This is a wind farm in 2016 that shows all the wind farms that was active in 2016, and it gives the plant name, the county, the nameplate capacity. So if you drop down to Chisholm View, it's kind of in blue. It's 235.2 is the nameplate. The operating month was 12 of 2012. On my depreciation schedule, I used a 2012, which gave it an 84% depreciation physical. Joe had it more right. It's probably the only thing that he got right in his whole appraisal was like 87% for the depreciation. A little pun intended again there too. So, but the number of turbines 140. But the important that factor comes in over here at the right, that 40.41%. So that's the average amount of time that it either turned or how much they sold electricity. So what I did to adjust that, if you look, the turbine height is 328 feet. The taller we go up, the faster winds that we have, more capable of running. So that's the larger blades to have the rotor spin faster and generate more electricity. So if you come down, the average of the new facilities that were being built in 2015 came in at about 50.48% at the bottom, those three in green. EIA reports showing that the new kind of top limit would be 50%. So we use that as an indicator of obsolescence across the board. So if we're going to look at it, and then when we did our sales approach, when you see it kept everything within a range of value. So I think our adjustments are very, very, very good. Next page is a rendition, and I'm going to flip through here. So if you go to page 9. So on page 9, this is our value. We believed our value was $53,438,645. So that's the value that we believed. We checked with the state commission last year where the value at the state level. Last year's value was $51,173,756. So we're a little bit increased in that. The reason for the difference is the state used a 12-year life, like Jeff said, for all that, and I could go in a long spiel. I'm not going to do that, but we don't believe that is representative of the marketplace for year life. 25 to 30 is more. We've used a 25-year life, and that would just go to the value. So our RCN comes in around 1,666,718. Again, that range of value we're talking about. If you go to Exhibit 11. This was his informal protest back on 5/7. His opinion of value there was $47,851,074. today it's 34 something.
Right.
30.
Okay.
And
so,
you have the actual backup for that
yeah,
value.
34 million. So we went from an informal hearing. I guess if the assessor would have protested, we accepted the 47 million if that was the value then. But now it's 34 million. On page 12. So this is our cost approach to value, basically kind of like my other on my detail sheet, and it kind of breaks out both counties for you. You have approximately 20% of the facility in Grant, the other 80 is in Garfield County. So this is my 271 million that I consider for the whole value. It shows the 53 million, 438, 645 utilizing the cost approach. If you'll go to the next page. This is a summary of the wind farms that I was discussing about, and I went through the process of finding the property, plant, and equipment values for there and summing up all the values, doing the location adjustments, doing the obsolescence factors, if you will. The total average from 2015 to 2017, the COD dates for all the facilities were installed from 2001 to 2017. So we have a good range, so we're going to be able to measure depreciation. We're going to be able to, one thing you should remember, he said it's what buyers and sellers, when you look at the income approach, what buyers and sellers are doing. This is what buyers and sellers is doing. And it takes in all forms of depreciation. It takes in physical, functional, and economic. So we don't have to go to the opinion, okay, well, you need to have this Bloomberg 84% factor. You need to figure that. So then you figure your year life. Now you got to figure obsolescence. It's all done for you, rolled up in this. And this is why you want to use the sales approach. And that's why they don't want to use the sales approach to value. But if you look at all over the total megawatts of 68.28 total megawatts, we had over 10 billion in sales. The average, if you go to the right-hand side, the average of the last 3 years was 1,607,667. You see the little orange to the left, it says 84.52% sales ratio. What that means is we valued each of the wind farms just like we valued this one that sold, and we arrived at a value. Then we compared it to the total sales price of the PPE. Our value using these cost tables and our depreciation and our obsolescence hit the market at 84.52%. I've got to apologize to her because she's supposed to be between 90 and 110. I missed my sales ratio. I'm below the sales ratio using this 1,607,000. She's supposed to be 90. So if we had adjusted that to 90%, the sales ratio would have been 1,700,000. So, but by statute, they're supposed to be between 90 and 110. I'm just saying, that just tells me that we're conservative using our start rates, using our depreciation table, and measuring the obsolescence. Sales approach. You go to the next page, it shows I use the 1,607,667. And there's no obsolescence now because it had everything. The fair market value is 317,623,553 now. So using the sales approach. Next page is their revenues and expense, the operating costs that they have. They have repairs and maintenance that's part of a turbine maintenance agreement, and that they roll up in their operating costs. Some of that cost should be a capitalized cost, and it wouldn't be an allowable in the depreciation side doing the cost approach. So I recast the income. It's highly objectionable to them saying you can't do that, but I looked at other income and expense of what other operators came in and did. So our range is about 25%, where they've got the range of 38 or 40%, and it skews the numbers on the income approach. So you go to the next page. So here's where I took out the property taxes, and it's not a legitimate deal. I took out the repairs and maintenance and depreciation expense, but what I did is I put back in a reserves. It's just like your house that you have. Your roof is only going to last 20 years. Your house might last 75. So you got to have so much money back to replace the roof, or replace the carpet, or to overhaul a turbine, or to replace a blade. So you put 8% of your income back each year of your revenue. So that's where those expenses come in lack of better information. You go over to the my income approach. I came in at $30 per megawatt. What I did is I took the 2016 production that I knew what the number was, divided it by his revenues back on the other exhibit, and it came in around $30 per megawatt is what they're receiving for the power. Now, one of the things that I'm not sure of, and we still got to get into that, is why the revenues went down on the generation because of the capacity. I mean, it might be something, Derek, that would normally be an expense side. Usually the company that's buying the power would have that. Could you explain why it's not shown as a cost rather than it comes off the revenues?
Because of the fact that it's inherent in the sale of the power, the auditor is required that the congestion charges that we incur reduce the revenue and not be recorded as an expense. So it came from the external auditors that audited the financial statements, was that they wanted to show that as a reduction of revenue and not as an
in the prior years. Was it showed as expenses then?
The costs really started for congestion in 2014 when SPP changed their market. So it wasn't real high in 14. 15 it was around 1.6. Went up to 2.7 in 16, and then the last year was over $10 million.
That's just one of the questions that I had in the overall revenues. You'd want to know, that would usually be an expense, but that explains it now that the auditors made them take it off the revenues. Usually it's dropped down under the line item. So, but anyway, with the income approach that I came in with was around $273 million. You go to the last, or the next to last page, I guess here, or page 18. My reconciled value of all three approaches comes in at $295,156. I'm showing the weighted cost approach at 25%. I'm showing my weighted income approach at 25%. If we put some of these other numbers or took these other adjustments, that would go down, but we're not asking for the $295 million. I still believe that our cost approach that we come into appropriately valued this property for both counties. And I think that's, I would still, testify in court if we had to go to do that on the methodologies that are done, just like we talked about here. I go back to the K and Grant County sales. We also had other sales with Ceiling 1, Ceiling 2 in Oklahoma, Mammoth. So we have sales actually in Oklahoma as well, to go off of too. But we get back at here, I just point out the reduction in the protested value. Originally it was 47. Now he appealed to the board at 29 million, and I think now you're at 37. So a lot of numbers bouncing off of you guys, but what we would ask that you affirm the county value on the last page at 271,814,643, and not let Joe talk anymore.
Well, Jerry, since I used to sit on your side of the fence, I don't know how much weighting to give your entire discussion since you arrived at a value of 295, but are running at the 271. So I guess Jerry and I are great friends because neither of us are wrong, right? It's an opinion.
Yeah, right.
It's a great business to be in, by the way. But it's a matter of who gives you, I guess, the more supportable information. And probably I think if I may just pick on the most egregious offense being done here is his income approach to value. A reserve for the replacement of the roof is a capitalized item. When we built this entire facility, we capitalized the entire cost. And we paid a little extra of that cost for probably a 2 or 5 year warranty. So that just like you do on your car, if anything breaks on it in the first 2 to 5 years, they'll pay it and they'll fix it. But that entire cost was capitalized. We gave Jerry our entire 5-year history of balance sheets and income statements so that we could both do and take a very educated guess at this income approach to value. So a reserve and his use of a 7% cap rate, those are real estate items. 7% cap rate is typical of a real estate building, but it is not of a going concern. We're valuing an income producing going concern, which is a wind farm. It's a business valuation. You use the actual financial statements incurred by the company unless there's an anomaly in it. If there was a hurricane and he was shut down for a month, you might normalize for that. I agree, you don't subtract property taxes, and neither do we, but we loaded it into the capitalization rate. And our capitalization rate is, again, just based on the study that's performed by the state of Oklahoma. So his dollars per megawatt is based on a 2016 number. We have a 5-year history. We've got this congestion problem. I used a 5-year average. I used a 5-year average on it, on the expense side as well. A reserve for an income producing property, I've never seen it in income approach to value. Never. In the 27 different states of tax personal property that I do work in, I've never seen it. Seen it lots of times on real estate. So if you just work within his model, which again is a bad model because it's a direct capitalization. You can sit here in this room tomorrow and look at these same numbers, that number's not going to change. It's because he's assuming this asset lasts into perpetuity. And as much as we'd like to live for an extremely long time, it's just not going to happen. The index information, when you do your mass appraisal work for Marshall and Swift, you assess it based on the entire industry. Yes, it includes the cost of the equipment. Marshall and Swift goes out to the US.gov office for the Bureau of Labor Statistics that publish the changes in prices of goods and services over time. Yes, then they bolt on whatever the associated labor costs are going to be for doing that. So by us using a wind turbine price index, we're doing exactly what you do if you use Marshall and Swift as a mass appraisal tool. It is based on the ebbs and flows of the prices for wind turbines. If you pay less, and this is a cost trend. When I said I had three different sources, this one here is from the U.S. Department of Energy. You got one yesterday.
No? You didn't pass this one out yesterday. I got an answer for this one.
Okay. So this is from the U.S. Department of Energy. Jerry, do you know, is the EIA a part of this same agency?
This is for wind turbines only as well. You got this out from the NREL. So it's not apples and apples. This is for wind turbines only again.
Right, but it's the same way you build an index or depreciation table for an entire industry, right?
No, you go to Handy Whitman, you have costs of labor costs as well that you've got to index, or you go to CPI, Consumer Price
Right.
Index.
Yes.
And you find out we would have to have the labor parts and all the ancillary costs that went along with this to be able to use this to trend back. I guess, but the only thing that I would argue is you should have done a replacement cost new and not a reproduction cost new. So what would your replacement cost new start rate be? It wouldn't be you use 1.3 million. I'm just saying that your replacement cost wouldn't be 1.3 million.
We could use a replacement cost new, but that number would be coming from our analysis in our head. I'm trying to present to the board some independent information, scholarly work that I have nothing to do with.
That's skewed.
That's available to Jerry as well. So basically all I want you to see here is the price trend. It backs up and supports what Bloomberg did. This is another slide from the same source, but you can see with the type of work that we all do is mass appraisal. We try to standardize some things because you've got hundreds of thousands of properties to value in a short period of time. But Oklahoma is in the entire interior section. And you can see this is a 2016 report based on 6,321 megawatts. You can see where each wind farm hit, and they're all below 1.5 million. Again, we rendered 100% of the cost of what we thought was tangible personal property. But it's like I say, it's one capitalized cost for the turbines. There's some intangibles in there, like the maintenance contract. We didn't back it out. My third source that I'll share with you is from a consulting firm. This also, you can see the price changes of wind turbines from 2011 being forecast all the way to 2020. And you can see that in 2012, in your specific market, the costs were projected at $1.6 million. The year before that, it was $1.891 million. And if we look as of the lien date, it's $1.442 million. Again, These are averages, but we are doing mass appraisal.
Where did the 1442 come in? I'm sorry.
It's on 2018 column for SPP.
Okay.
May I lend them your glasses, please?
Jeff took off with them.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just say one last thing, just so that this will actually help Jerry, and he probably won't be able to use it in any more of his hearings.
I've got a copy of that.
But I've got to add some value to
There is an addendum to April of 2016.
yeah,
that
you
did
sent me
include.
that actually 2
Okay.
months ago.
Okay.
And from that, I went down and dug a little deeper. And so, you heard Jerry say about the cost he's using, he's then tweaking them based on location. So this is the same source from which the addendum that he sent me is pulled from. And I didn't bother to ask the hotel for a highlighter, so I'll have to walk you through it. But if you go to page 2 on the bottom, you'll see that some of the capital cost that Jerry considered in the development of his replacement cost new. You see what I underlined here? This entire study was based on one wind farm. Now, he didn't use it, but you'll see what the number is. You've heard those numbers of 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. At this time that this study was done, it was $1,887 a kilowatt. So, one other thing that we have.
That's 1.8 million per megawatt.
Yeah, in here. So let's go to page 3. At the very top, you'll see I underlined that onshore wind. Jerry has used this information, and I review it as well. Overnight costs for onshore wind decreased by approximately 25% relative to the 2013 study. So in a 3-year time frame of studies by this administration, there's been a 25% drop.
Agree.
So I think that, in essence, just sums up our differences. Jerry, what I wanted to point out to you is that the information you're using to address the location of power plant capital costs, the map that you showed, which was a 2015 map, so this is a 2016 paper, that the estimates provided in this report are a generic facility, then they adjusted for these regional differences. But starting reading here, these adjustments were made to reflect the impact of remote location costs associated with seismic design, vary by region, labor wage, and productivity differences by region. But then you go down below, it tells you that this paper, this study, underwent a peer review. Therefore, EIA does not use the regional factors included in this report for its analysis of wind technologies. So even though they published it in 2015, they do not rely on it, they do not use it.
That's fine. Understand.
But it was used in his approach, so.
I used it in the sales approach to make locational adjustment factors.
And in your cost approach as well?
No.
Using an RCN?
No, I did not use it in the cost approach.
Okay. Page 8 just pointed out again that the 2013 report was publishing the cost of onshore wind at $2,354, a 25% drop to the
Where's that?
1877.
On page 8? Where?
Yeah.
Yeah. To
Yeah,
8.
see the circle? Yeah.
No, I don't see a circle. I'm sorry. You didn't circle mine.
You're not special.
You're right.
Neither are you.
Okay.
I found it.
Yeah.
Was that your last thing?
So I would say, Jerry, in conclusion, that this is an income-producing property. I appreciate your sales and the specific examples you brought to the table, but you left out the most important page. Because I, as an accountant, certainly appreciate purchase price allocations. The definition of fair value is somewhat very similar to fair market value. And when you have a sale like that, sales price divided by megawatt just gives you the gross number. But you've got to break it down to the PP&E. And you left that page out. I can't trust you, sorry.
Okay, it's fine. The last name is Wisdom.
Good point. Any questions of the board?
It's got one quick thing left.
Okay,
He pointed out 1,877,000 on the page. But he's talking about 1.3 million. I don't care if it's 25. He went down 25% from there. That's fine for this one, but it's still 1.8 million.
That's a 16 report, right?
Yeah, actually, we're still waiting on the new number. And again, all this is, still in a range of value. We're not asking for 1.8 million and all the others. So I mean, I just want to say that the other wind farm that we valued today was valued the same way this wind farm was. And this is called the Board of Equalization. So we equally valued both wind farms the same. Thank you.
And our argument is that every property, not only every wind farm in this county, uniform and equal means you value them at 100% of fair market value before you apply your assessment ratio. Income producing properties should be assessed based on their income earning capabilities. And you're more than welcome to use our financials for our wind farm, not theirs. I'm done.
Cut it off.
I'm going to let him get the last word.
Are you sure?
No.
Okay, after listening to the discussion,
Here's what, that's what.
we have a,
That's what Jerry's asked us to do.
yeah, affirm that the assessor's valuation of 271, 814, 643 be accepted as the value for the appraiser.
As a specific value to your county?
Yeah, the specific,
is $37,840,000.
No. It's not. The specific
that's both counties.
That's both counties.
For Garfield and Grant?
Yeah,
Garfield and Grant?
Yeah, the other value is,
20% of that.
hang on, I've got it. Get the actual.
Technically, it's 19.6.
Yeah, it said 20%.
53,438,645.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. And it's on page 9 of my exhibit.
Okay. Do I hear a motion
I would
to accept this value of
$53,438,645. Yes, I so move.
second?
All in favor, Jones?
Aye.
Brabender?
Aye.
Motion carries. To accept the affirmed assessed value for the, which one is this? Chisholm View Wind Farm, as Grant County's portion is $53,438,645 for the assessed value.
But I enjoyed the discussion.
You guys are all smarter now about wind farms.
Can I get
For
the
sure.
Can I get the DVD of the hearing?
Go out to YouTube. It's out on YouTube.
Is it really?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It's nice to meet you.
So
Yes,
at
you as well.
12, okay. All in favor? I guess all in favor. Aye and aye.
Walking
I know,
vote.
okay, gotcha. Okay, we're done.